Hey, tech enthusiasts. Welcome to FocustChats, the ultimate blend of technology, fun, and education. I'm Becky Faith, your host on this thrilling ride. At FocustApps, we're all about the game changing power of tech. And with FocustChats, we're handing you the tools to rock it. Let's get focused. Hello, everyone. My name is Becky Faith, and I am the host of FocustChats. Today, I have Kevin Meyers, our Director of Applications Development. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi, how's it going today?
Going good. Thank you. I just wanted to have Kevin on here because he is our guru of technology at FocustApps, and he is very helpful to me and helps educate and guide me along this technical journey. And Kevin and I talk on a weekly basis about things that we feel like our customers, our audience, our prospects need to know about. And the main subject that we felt like everyone needed to understand, and hopefully we can simplify that for you all, is artificial intelligence.
Yep.
So before I get started and go down this path of in the journey of artificial intelligence with Kevin, I do want to give him a proper introduction. And I'm going to read from this outstanding resume of experience that he has, and then we'll get started. So, first of all, Kevin, once again, I want to reiterate that he is our Director of Application Development at FocustApps. This Tech Titans journey is nothing short of exhilarating. Kevin's quest for knowledge began at Ohio University, where he earned his bachelor's in computer science, laying the foundation for his tech prowess. But he didn't stop there. This overachiever secured an MBA and even mastered lean manufacturing, proving his versatility in technology and business. Kevin's career has been a whirlwind of excitement, taking him through various industries and roles, from building quality control systems to mastering manufacturing processes at companies like TRW and Franklin Electric. This tech wizard has left his mark on every endeavor. He's wore many hats, including project manager, IT auditor, budgeting guru, data analytics ninja, and sales extraordinaire. Among Kevin's most impressive conquests are successful MRP migrations, international work experiences, and the triumphant launch of FocustApps itself. Kevin takes pride in delivering value to customers and forging unbreakable professional relationships. Kevin's areas of expertise span from IT operations, manufacturing, analytics, and business process optimization. He is a true master, honing his skills through hands on experience, mentorships, and continuous learning, staying ahead of the curve with emerging technologies like Internet of Things, or as we know it as IoT, or AI, artificial intelligence. With his well rounded background, extensive expertise, and an unwavering commitment to growth, Kevin Meyers is a true tech titan blazing new trails for Focused Apps. And all of that is true, Kevin. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for being here.
It seems it's a long laundry list of items, but
Well, you've got a lot of experience, and one thing that I loved about it is what was most important to you was being able to share your knowledge and help guide. And if you didn't have the answers, you always go to try to find them and go over and beyond to help people. At least when I work with you, I've experienced that, and I respect that. And then also the fact that you're a good family man and that you try really hard and you interject your family in a lot of the conversations that we have. And I especially enjoy that. So
thank you.
thank you. So, Kevin, let's just kind of get started about the journey of AI and how it, or even just how we talked about technology. You went over that with me one day, and I was like, wow, we were talking about how fast it's moved over the last 10 to 15 years and phones and all the different things with technology. So if you don't mind to just kind of let's just talk about it.
Sure. I
Okay.
mean, technology has really gone fast. Like it continues to grow very, very quickly, and it's accelerating
Yeah.
exponentially. It feels like most days.
Yes.
Um, and the reason, like, if you think about, technology really came into play during the 60s, right? That's
Mhm.
kind of where a lot of it was really being used quite a bit. And then into the 70s, it started to grow with more computers. People that started showing up with big mainframes. You
Yes.
hear stories about IBMs and
Yes.
these big buildings with mainframes of kilobytes worth of data or maybe even megabytes. And that was like, oh my goodness, what are you going to do with 10 megabytes worth of data?
Right. Right.
And then it gradually moved on to the 80s where you start seeing some more home desktops type stuff, right? Like you start
Mhm.
seeing it. It was still expensive, but you start seeing that desktop, the big monolith
They were st
computers.
they were still huge.
They were still big, but you could fit it in your house though.
That's right. That's right.
Um, and I even remember my parents, specifically my mom, going back to school to learn how to use a computer like an IBM, what we consider
Okay.
green screens today,
All right. Yeah.
because you knew that was the wave of the future, right? So
Mhm.
that was kind of when I
Smart
was
gadget.
younger, yeah, my introduction to that type of stuff. And we always had computers in the house as well. But I think the big, it seems like quite a bit of years there where it didn't seem like we moved very quickly, but we actually were. It was going along, but then all of a sudden we kind of hit the 90s. And
Okay.
90s kind of blew up with internet, right? Like the late
Sure.
80s, 90s. That's when the internet just started to come on, right? Like
Mhm.
that was kind of the next big wave of big wave of technology that came out for everybody. Like big mainframes was one thing, and then being able to put a computer on your at your home was the next kind of big thing. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden it was the internet, and what the
Yes.
internet drove really web pages, right? Like it was just
Mhm.
a boom in the 90s, which was a great
I
time for
remember.
myself.
And I remember going, "I'll never use the internet."
Exactly, exactly. And of course,
You know?
yeah, well, we remember the dial-up tones back in those days, to get online. And but that was humongous for the industry and
Mhm.
for technology because it took computers essentially and it put it even more into the hands of users, right? It
Mhm.
became personal. That's why it's called a personal computer, right? Like
Yes.
that's basically what it is. And so that really pushed that. Microsoft pushed it, Apple was pushing that type of stuff, which it just made it more accessible, right? And the
Mhm.
demand was bigger and quicker. Well, then you kind of, we kind of settled in there and we kind of got to more server type architecture, things like
Yes.
that, and memory started getting bigger and RAM started getting bigger, right? Like, and processing started getting faster.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, we end up with smartphones, right? Like it
Mhm.
just
Which is
ex-
unbelievable where that's
ex- exactly, and that came in the 2000-ish range,
Mhm.
right? Was smartphones really started to come on, with the initial Blackberries and things like that.
Yes.
Um, but you think about it, that it took us 20 years roughly to get to the internet, and it only took us roughly another 10 to 15 years to get to smartphones, roughly,
Right.
right? And then even from there, we went very quickly into cloud, right? That was kind
Yes.
of the next big leap in technology for us, which is kind of crazy. It only took roughly 10 years. Like, okay, you can kind of see the pattern. We keep
Yes.
getting shorter and shorter.
Yes.
And now AI is in front of us, right?
Right.
And I'm doing the major hits. Like, there's other stuff that
Oh,
was happening,
sure.
but
Sure, but still that, do you think like with AI, did you like what I think of and I may be off on this because I've told you, and this is why we're talking about this, is that there is a lot of confusion, a lot of jargon, a lot of confusion about AI and kind of when that came into play. But like maybe like Siri or is that kind of like what, like a little introduction of AI, or am I completely off on that?
it can be, yes. It's kind of the start of it. Thinking of Google and searching like
Mhm.
Siri and Cortana, right? If you're in
Mhm.
the Microsoft world, those were like recognition of your voice, right?
Mhm.
And understanding what you're kind of asking for. But it was still kind of doing a Google. I use the word
Kind of
Google search, but an internet search right,
Sure.
in the background to provide you the information that you wanted. So, yes, it's kind of
Kind of
taking us. It was like a step. It was a step in that direction.
okay. Okay.
But but AI essentially has been around, or the idea of it, and it has been working on since the 70s, right?
Yeah.
70s is when it kind of all those thoughts were there, right? Like we
Mhm.
haven't, but it's taken that long for us to get to the point where we can actually use it. And
Yes.
that's what's kind of the interesting part now.
Yeah.
Um, we see it in sci-fi movies, we see it
Right.
in all kinds of stuff. But
That's how I
it's
remember it, with Terminator and I think that's where Terminator, and I think there was another one that came out, the Blade Runner, that was a little bit of that,
what
and
if you remember in the 80s, there was a movie, I forget who the actor was, but it was like war games, and that's
yes,
where like it took it over.
yes,
Like he was playing a game, and he was actually playing a game against a computer that was controlling the nuclear warehouse of the US, right? Like
right,
that's
right.
kind of the say the mindset, but that's kind of where some of the scariness can come
Yeah,
from because it
the fear of it for sure, because we all were like, can that really happen? I just remember thinking, what this is crazy, And I
yep,
do think that kind of helped, push that perception of fear of AI is
yep,
having those movies that we see many years ago,
yep.
many years ago. So
And there's always good with the bad, right? Every type of technology leap, there's always some form of, okay, how much, for example, when the internet became available, right, to people, well, what should be an internet? Should it be censored? How do we clap down on what people can see?
yeah,
Those are things, that popped up. And then also security around the internet, right? That is still an ongoing thing,
yes.
that's always out there. So every major leap in technology does have a little bit of like, okay, there's a little bit of stuff that we have to deal
We have
with.
to have regulations and policies and make sure
Exactly.
that we protect everyone and keep
Exactly.
it secure.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what we're going through and the fear of it, but we all usually know that we have to be secure, and we try to do that the right way.
Yep.
um
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. um lot of milestones, a lot of different things that have happened, and a lot of when I hear about AI, I see a lot of kind of confusion or not understanding exactly the definition of what artificial intelligence is and how it would work for business owners or businesses. What can you give us a simplified, maybe a story or something that could simplify it for us to so people like me could understand it better.
So very simply, AI doesn't think.
Okay.
So a lot of people have that interpretation, but what it does do is allow you to have a very human conversation with it, and it can understand what you're saying and provide the context back to you in a very natural language, right?
Mhm.
If you search using an internet search engine or whatever, there's certain ways you can search, but it's not natural. Like you can't speak to it and it understand what you're trying to do. And that's where
It can't feel or any of that, right?
yeah, yeah, there's no human emotions
Right.
behind it. And
Right.
it's really it's AI. It's built on top of multiple things. It's
Okay.
built upon large language models, and I think people call it LLMs because
Mhm.
IT loves acronyms. But you know so they're it's built upon a large language model, which then you have natural language that sits on top of it, and processors, right? And what that does is it actually says, okay, it dissects the human language,
Mhm.
and specifically they built this around English right now. So there are other languages that are coming,
Okay.
but it started, all this and these large language models started around English, right?
Mhm.
For whatever reason, probably because most people speak English around the
Mhm.
world of some form or fashion.
True.
But that's where it started, and they're expanding that. But that natural, the language processing, what that does for you is it basically dissects your language, right? And
Okay.
it says, okay, this is what you're trying to say. So there's algorithms and code back there that's dissecting a sentence that you throw at it, so it can say, okay, this is what this person is talking about or what he's trying to get. And that's where kind of chat gpt is in
Yes,
that world, right?
which I love. I love it.
Yep,
I
yep.
mean, and but it still though doesn't not 100 to me 100% when I'm asking it. I have to ask it several different ways or
Yep.
in detail or like shorten it or things like that for it to
But
understand
yeah, but
what I'm asking.
yeah, but what's really kind of cool is like kind of the best way to to I say explain it would be to be like if you're trying to predict what's the next word, you know,
Right,
the sky is, and then you're asking it, well, what's the next word? Wait,
right.
sky
Okay,
is
makes
what
sense.
color, right?
Hmm.
So you're not saying what color is the sky, but you're saying the sky is this color of,
Hmm.
and then fill in the word. That's what that natural language processing will do for you, is to say, okay, the possibility of that next word being blue is a certain percentage.
Right. Okay. I
And so
get that.
that's how, yeah, so that's how it's saying, okay, well, we think that the sky is blue.
Hmm.
Now, there's also other opportunities. It could be orange, it could be yellow, right? Like
Right.
based upon where
Pink,
the sun is
whatever.
at.
Right.
Exactly. It could be different colors. And what makes it seem human, right, or gives that human like feeling is it doesn't always pick the top choice, right?
Okay.
So yes,
Hmm.
blue is the top choice. Most of the time when people ask that question, you're going to see that, 75% of the time people will say blue.
Hmm.
But then it has those other alternatives to say, okay, well, sometimes it's pink, yellow, orange, right? There's that difference there that it can choose from. And those are all different percentages
Okay.
that it can choose, right?
Okay.
So, and it doesn't just pick the highest one. Like you would think, well, the top one should always be the one that's picked. Well, no. And kind of the reason behind that is because that's human logic too, right?
Sure.
Like you're not always going to pick the right one. You sample
Everybody's
100.
different. Everybody's different and looks at the
Exactly.
sky in a different way and maybe thinks of the sky not just blue. The percentage might be high there, but it could be like you said, purple or lavender or whatever,
Yep.
That's
And that
pretty
gives that perception, like human perception when it's
sure.
responding back to you. So like you can ask the same question multiple times to chat GPT, but it could respond differently to you. And so it gives you the feeling that it's human like, right?
Right.
And
But
it's really not. And then it uses artificial intelligence uses another layer, which is like machine learning that goes on top of
okay.
it. And you're like, what's the difference between machine learning and
Exactly.
AI? Right?
Because
Like,
I think we all need to know that because there is big confusion there, I think, with that.
it is. So AI uses machine learning, but what machine learning is it kind of flips the script of what you typically do programming, right? Like
Okay.
usually you have data and you have an algorithm and it gives you some result out of it, right?
Okay.
Well, now, which is fine, you can get that
Mhm.
result, but that can also be considered a model versus
Okay.
results. So it's a model. So
Sure.
now what you can do is take that model and give it some more data and give you like predictive results.
Okay. Can you kind of give me an example of that, maybe in a business or something? Just kind of simplify that a little bit.
Sure. So, for instance, let's just do something simple in manufacturing, right?
Okay.
What you can do is you can take maybe some sales data from a particular region, right?
Okay.
And you can get an algorithm of kind of like what might be the top sellers of products in that particular area.
Okay.
And you can have different types of data that comes in to determine that. Well, now you can take that model that you've generated and maybe use that in a different region of the country, and you could get
Okay.
different results
Right.
using
Okay.
the same factors or same data,
Okay.
uh, and that will give you a different prediction.
All right.
So, which is kind of nice, right?
Yeah.
Because
Oh, yeah.
you,
Absolutely.
you're able to uh, use the same set of data and put them into a different area and tell you what the difference is, right? and you
Okay.
can continue to feed that model to make it better, right? You can continue
Okay.
to feed it more and more data, and that will make your model better. I mean,
And really, that's kind of the ideal of it, is that you get it started, but you continue to feed it more. So you tighten up that data and really get more data out of that
yeah, yeah,
process. Okay,
exactly.
good.
It's like asking more questions. Is kind of
Sure.
how I look at
Right.
it. Like if you want to know something about really anything, you start asking one question, which leads
Yes.
to another question, leads to another question. And so
Yeah.
every time you get a result or answer, you can continue to feed that into your model and make adjustments to the model to get the results that you're looking for.
Okay. Great. So that's
So,
machine learning.
yep, that's machine
Okay.
learning. Yep.
And then, how is AI different from that?
So AI sits on top of all that.
Okay.
So it
Hmm.
uses machine learning or uses models, but it uses it in a human-like factor. So, for
Okay.
instance, versus just getting data out from your machine learning and then you have to interpret it, what you can do is you can start asking it questions.
Okay.
So some of the stuff like with the generative AI type stuff and reporting mechanisms now, you can continue to say, okay, I have all this data, I have this model, I'm feeding it data on a daily basis. I can start asking it questions in a very human fashion, like
Okay.
who's my best salesperson in this area?
Okay.
And then it will tell you Bob from such and such division is the best salesperson, right? Or
Okay.
who's the vendor that I'm buying the most equipment from, right? It can go through and it can tell you that versus looking at a chart and having a human go through it and some executive asking you a question, yeah, and be like, well, just a second, let me
Yeah, a
let me
couple of
find the
things.
report. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So
So
it actually eliminates, it's probably more accurate data, I would assume, because it's able to pull that information quickly. It's able to just kind of grab that information and show you. So it's more accurate than maybe if you're having to go through a lot of different reports, a lot of maybe say Excel reports and things like that. And then it's
yep.
also going to the time that it takes to kind of go through all that, maybe look at all the different regions and do all that kind of stuff. It just pulls that data right out.
Yeah, and I think it'll continue to grow even with external data. So, companies I foresee using internal data that they already have collected, but then matching it up with external data. And like we've kind of mentioned before, one of the companies I worked with, right, a lot of their business can be based upon weather events, such as
Yes.
flooding, such as hurricanes, such as droughts, right?
Yeah.
So being able to feed information externally into their overall model, you can continue to ask it questions and do more predictions very quickly because most businesses and most manufacturing, right, they want to get their products in the correct area at the right time and they don't want to overbuild, right? They don't want to have
Right.
extra inventory just sitting
Absolutely.
around. So it's that just in time, right? That lean
Mhm.
manufacturing. I want to get my part to where I want it to be right when they need it to take advantage of the market, right?
Yes.
And
Yes. And
so,
so that's the predictive part of it. Is that what you're speaking?
yes,
Which I think is amazing. If you can predict that, where I need to be sending my parts because this is going to happen. This could be a big flood somewhere, and in this part they can utilize to help them with get rid of that water. I know that I'm prepared to have that shipped in that area before it even happens.
yeah, and even because every company has limited resources, right? I don't
Right.
care if you're Apple or if you're a $1 million company, right? You have limited amount of resources, and
Right.
so to be able to predict events is so advantageous to a company because you can take those resources and you can push it where you need it to be to affect your overall revenue for the company. So
Amazing.
being able, yeah, so be able to do that, and that's where the artificial intelligence with machine learning and everything else is going to help companies, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just it's 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 there, right? We're
Right.
right at that breaking point, and you can see like Microsoft and AWS are investing so heavily in this area and they're even, some of the stuff that they're doing, making things a little bit more private. I like ChatGPT where it's
Yeah.
open, so they're
Yeah.
moving in that direction because that's the benefit of it all. Because like I said, limited resources, whether that's people, money, manufacturing machines, things like that. Like it's always everybody's always limited, and so if you can do more with less,
Hmm.
every company is going to want that.
Sure. Absolutely. I think the fear for a lot of people in the workforce is is AI going to take over, my job, my position? And what do you say to that? I mean,
Well, with every technology advancement that's been out there, there has been jobs that have been consumed by technology. It's
sure.
just it is what it is. And I've done a lot in that realm, being in the manufacturing where we've
Yeah.
moved equipment around or we brought new equipment in and we've had it downsized. But what we've always done in those situations, we just don't go, all right, see you 10 people, we got a machine, you're
Right.
all gone. No. Typically you're keeping those people on and you were trying to retrain them, right?
Yes.
To do other things, that
Sure.
to make the company even more profitable because sometimes there's a lot of waste in day-to-day activities that people do, uh,
Hmm.
that you can then say, okay, if it can be automated in some form of fashion, I can use that resource where I can even get more value from a company, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
yes, there is some downsizing. I'm not going to say that that never happens, but more times than not, we adjust and we retrain
Yes.
people
And I'm seeing that already.
yeah,
And I also believe that most of the time, um, when you have, like when you do replace something with that's automated or whatever, don't you always kind of have to have a human touch to manage it if it breaks down, or if there's something happens, or to read the numbers or whatever? You've got to have somebody that knows how to
yeah,
deal with that.
yeah, yeah,
So you're not, you're able to have, I've been to just recently went to a manufacturer, and they had to, they have equipment, but they have to have a person that does a lot of the work for them. But they had an individual that understands what's going on and manages that huge piece of equipment, to make sure that everything is okay. So it's not like it may eliminate some things, but you still have to have that human touch.
exactly, exactly. You're not going to what I always think of like AI and for executives, right? You're not going to get rid of your CFO. You're not going to
Right.
get rid of your CIO, right? Or you're not going to, the chairman's still going to be sitting there. My thing with AI when it's related to this is you're going to have an extra person sitting there that's not basing decisions on their gut, right? A
Right.
lot of times I have seen where they look at the data and then they have somewhat of a gut feeling based upon the data, and then they make a decision and move forward. This
Right.
is an extra gut check, to
Yes.
say, hey, hey, is this what you're seeing, right? Or what's the data tell me in a very human and natural form, right?
Yes.
Now with everything, even with ChatGPT, you have to read it, right? You have to
Yes.
read it to make sure that your grammar is correct and what the information they're giving back to you is correct, and
Mhm.
the context that you asked questions in are coming back to you correctly. So it's not a blind, hey, you're telling me the truth, and I don't need to check you. It's
Right.
more of, hey, I want to know this, and I want to
Mhm.
know this right now
Right.
versus having to go look for it, right?
Mhm.
And or how many times is like, hey, I don't have this one report. You got to go back to IT, and you have to get more data, or you have to have somebody regenerate the port for you, versus just asking it a question, right? Like
Right.
there's no reports anymore because you can say, hey, what's this? Now you may take that and go confirm it, but you're not waiting for sometimes months,
Mhm. Absolutely.
years to make a decision.
Yeah, that's good, and I like that we all have that gut feeling that we want to make decisions. But I do think having the numbers and data and all of those things are important as well. And that's good that we're able to do that. I think it's a
Yeah.
positive thing.
It-
Um, Tell me, how can like different processes within businesses can AI help? All pretty much any business. Where do you foresee the most help for that AI can do for companies?
Uh, Definitely sales. Sales is a big
Okay.
one.
Okay.
There's quite a bit of advantage there. Like I said, that's kind of the predictive area, right?
Yeah.
We kind of were talking about. Manufacturing is also another big, right? There's a new wave in manufacturing that's coming. I've been hearing about it through the grapevine
Okay.
from some people,
Tell me
which is kind of
that.
it's the next leap in
Okay.
manufacturing
Okay.
related to technology. That is right. So we've always had a lot of data collection here over the past few decades,
Mhm.
but really that next leap, nobody quite knows what it is, but it'll be interesting. But
Okay.
manufacturing, I don't know how many meetings I've been in looking at reports and Excel spreadsheets and things like that.
Oh yes.
It's can be
They
quite
do.
time.
I mean, they have for years though. I mean, that's what they know.
Yeah. And you got 30 people in a conference room asking, questions or answering questions and stuff like that. I think that in itself can continue to slim down, right? Like
Mhm.
the lean part, well, the data analytics part, that to AI just really fits right into that mold too, right? Like
Yes.
you, you ask it a question and it can tell you the answer versus having to get out your Excel MATLAB or whatever they use these days on the lean side to
Right.
to calculate your Six Sigma type stuff.
Mhm.
It's you don't need that, right? You feed
Mhm.
all this information into your models, and then from there you can start using AI on top of those models to start asking it questions
Yes.
like why was this machine down, right? Well, the
Mhm.
machine was down because of X, Y, and Z. Like a part was broken, or it was just running slow. Like the
Mhm.
operators decided to get a cup of coffee for some reason. Like
But it's
it
good to
can.
know those things because then,
Yep.
way to manage it. They want to do things faster and quicker and be more efficient. This is definitely the way to go.
And let me tell you, I mean, I'm not complaining about operators getting a cup of coffee because I myself once in a while would grab a Coke or something like that to keep myself awake.
Right.
There's
Oh,
no problems
absolutely.
on that. But it's just a matter of understanding what's going on
Sure.
with your machines, with your manufacturing lines, all that good stuff. And I think
Because a
that's
lot of that is probably a guess and then having to take the time. I mean, do they shut it down and try to figure out why? I mean, have they, or they have to wait a certain time, knowing that is not, it's running slow and, uh, you know, this way they can find the answer quickly, jump on it and start moving that process quicker.
and even more so, like there's preventive maintenance and things like that in the manufacturing world that, I'm going to replace this part every 100 cycles on a machine or something like that. Like
Okay.
there's that type of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and there's even, sometimes they have what they call like quality metrics on a machine where, after it gets out of a certain range, they know they need to go back and fine tune things like that.
Okay.
So there's checks and balances there now. It's just even more, right? There's another level on top that you can start
Right.
doing, right? So it's allows you to even be more preventative or more less reactive and proactive, right? Because everybody wants to be, and I don't care what industry you're in, you want to be more proactive than reactive. Because if you're
Yes.
being reactive, that costs more money and resources to get caught up or to fix something. So
Yeah.
that's where I foresee AI in the manufacturing world really helping you along the way. You can be more proactive in decision making and what's going on your floor versus reactive.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Do you think too, like in logistic? I mean, that's just across the board in
It,
any company, pretty
yeah, logistics another big part of it, right? Money or money related to fuel
yes.
costs, routes, mileage, wear and tear on trucks, how packages are shipped, or like Amazon has been, crazy in that world. And as
Yeah.
far as logistics are concerned, and they've kind of really changed the industry from like FedEx and UPS, right?
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
pushed those guys to change and how they run things.
Yeah.
And they are even getting into more AI type stuff.
Yeah.
And even their facilities are becoming more automated. You see that probably in news specials and things
Yes.
like that of how they
Yes.
run the facilities. Like, and AI is only going to continue to enhance that type of stuff, like with robotics,
Sure.
because it's robotics is there, but if you can add a little bit of intelligence to it, and intelligence is kind of it's not intelligent, right?
Right.
It's using information against these models to make a decision, and that's it. But you can the inputs into it, like sensors, and then when I say sensors, it could be audible sensors, touch type sensors, where you're saying, okay, I'm this close to a physical object, or even visual sensors, which is kind of the coolest thing, using those types of stuff to feed into the robotics, and then using AI on top of it to interpret that
Hmm.
is what to me is going to kind of change the manufacturing when it comes to
Sure.
robotics are concerned.
Okay.
And it's the menial tasks, right?
Yes.
It's that type of stuff that's going to help manufacturing people.
Okay. That's great. That's good information, Kevin. Thank you. Really good. I'm like, wow. I learn something every time I talk to you. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Um, what about concerns or challenges that may happen, with AI that you foresee companies having, or I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of, there's a lot of fear. And we talked about the movie situation and it taking over, and also people thinking they're going to lose their jobs. Some people, like for example, you just talked about, the position where they're using a lot of Excel. They're very good at it. They've got it. They know how to use it. They can, and they are pretty savvy to it, but it's taking them a lot of time. And they have that fear that if they are use AI to help them, get the answers quicker and all that, that's going to eliminate their job. Do you foresee that happening, or do you think that's a positive thing for them because they're able to do more within the company because and use their special talents that they have and work more on the company instead of in the company with the Excel sheets, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. So AI is not. I don't consider it intelligent, right? It's not, and I consider intelligence is also based upon emotions, people emotions and
Yeah.
feelings about stuff, right? That's to me a big part of human intelligence. Artificial intelligence doesn't have that whatsoever. So being able to say it's going to take over the world, maybe not at this point. We're probably many years from doing that, but it's interesting. I'm also interested to see how the military is starting to use artificial intelligence.
Sure.
But some of that could be, like I said, using visualizations and feeding it into models to make determinations of what's going on versus having to have a human make some of those determinations. Now, they're not going to have somebody have their a robot on the nukes or anything like that.
I don't
um
know. That iRobot. I mean, as long as
well,
he's got that good human emotion,
you
the
just
good side.
we'll just hire Will Smith
That's
to
right.
do
There
it
you
now,
go.
and we'll be done.
That's
But
pretty. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that's the part of, to me, the intelligence part, right? Is the human, I think the human factor related to emotions and feelings and things like that.
So we just need to remember that, AI is when it says artificial intelligence, eliminate the feeling side, the anger, the sadness, all of that. Just
Yep.
put it aside, put the emotions aside. It's more of just getting information quicker and more detailed data
Yep.
to help you run your businesses.
And
That's
the important part, like you said, the downside, some things that is making sure the data that you're feeding it is what you want, right? So
Okay.
you kind of heard probably early on when ChatGPT was going out, you had people out there trying to trick it and ask things, to try to get a to elicit a certain response to you.
Yep.
Um, in that respect, yes, that's the important part of it, making sure because you can trick even ChatGPT. There's certain things that you can do inside of it to trick it out, to elicit a response that you want to elicit, right? Because it's like I said, it's just a predictive response mechanism back to you. And there's different things that, like I said, there's different things that you can do to kind of trick it out. So that's what really that they're working on, but also making sure, what everybody is probably worried about is being biased, right? Like
Yeah.
having that conversation, asking it a question, and giving it back to you in an unbiased opinion or form, right? I think that's
That's really weird, but I guess I didn't think about that, but that makes complete sense. That's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's what they're trying to work on is that part because you can say, hey, you can put certain things in there to say, hey, if I'm saying this, I want this to pop out. Well,
Huh.
the thing is like if 100 people are asking that question, or even 1 million people, or 2 million people are asking that same question or something similar to it, it could elicit a response that may be inaccurate, right? Because it's only being fed what we can feed it, right?
Right.
And it's being fed by really it's the internet is what's feeding all this information if you
Right.
think
That's
about
what
it.
I was getting ready to ask you. So I know that we actually have our lunch and learns, and you have someone that Jared got up and spoke for us about it. And he talked about that. Um, was it Google that pulled all this information from books? Maybe I'm overstepping here, but can you give me a little backstory on that of what they did over the years up until 2021, I think, and then
Yes.
and beyond?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact date off my head, but that sounds about right. And what they did was they basically took all books that they could find on the internet and outside of that, and basically they put it into, like I said, one big model, essentially. And um, and it does, and that's was kind of an older version. I think it's ChatGPT 3.5 and
Yeah.
back is what they were using it.
Okay.
And now they've, the newer versions, it's more real time, right? It's
Yes.
continuing to screen scrape or web scrape, what they call it, pages and information that's being fed on a regular basis. So that's kind of the other aspect of it is, when you're generating things for yourself, you need to make sure that the data that you're feeding it to get the information that you want, right? You may not want the whole World Wide Web information
Right.
to dictate your business, right? That you're trying to run. But you can have a subset, and that's like I said, that's what a lot of Azure and Microsoft Azure and AWS is doing is providing those localized custom models that you can train on your data, right?
Right.
So
Okay.
these big companies they have models that they've already generated. Some of them have like sales models already that are sitting out there. They're very generic and they've been fed by multiple pieces of information across different industries. You can even see that with GitHub Copilot that's out there these days.
Hmm.
That's a big language model as well, strictly related to coding. And
Okay.
so it's that type of stuff is out there, and it's like I said, it's big and it's being fed. But then you have the custom side of it too, where you can say, "This is I want this particularly, and this is how I want my model to run." And you can use that for your particular business. Now, if you're just interested in sales and things like that, the Microsoft, out of the box sales might be good
Hmm.
enough for you to get by, which we've done, for some of our clients is use that to do some predictive analysis on um, being able to fill in certain fields based upon invoices, right? So
Right.
we use artificial intelligence to help make some of those decisions for us.
Okay.
And we did start off with like a sales model that was generic by Microsoft, and it gave us good results. We were
Mhm.
probably based upon that industry or that client's information on the invoices, because we were trying to pick out certain keywords that they needed their ERP system to run on.
Okay.
Those keywords were not in the invoice. So we had to use line item information or descriptions to try to interpret what should be
Interesting.
chosen in those drop downs. So we use the normal sales model, like I said, that came out of the box. We were seeing 50%, 60% accuracy coming from that.
Okay.
But we want to be up in the 80, 90%
Sure.
range. And so that's when we started going down the custom data model route, which is based upon um, taking it a step further. So we actually do two. We run the sales model from Microsoft, and then we run another custom model on top of that to get us up above the 80%, 90% success rate, right? When trying to determine that. And
Yeah.
that's, like I said, that's that human interaction. Like, why do you want somebody to look at a line item on an invoice and go and click something on a computer just so it can be fed into your ERP system correctly, which could be like a characterization or something like that. That's a lot
Mhm.
of time for one
Sure.
person to do that, and
Absolutely.
it's routine work, right?
Mhm.
And I've always been under impression, or that, or my philosophy, I probably should say, is that I want to work on exceptions. I don't want to work on everything, right? Like, I
Right.
just want to handle the problems. I don't want to
Sure.
handle everything. So
Right.
if I can automate 80, 90% of the work, I can focus on my last 10%, which is what is really needed to make my
What's
business
really
successful.
important.
Yep, that
Absolutely.
value that you get from it.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. That's good. And I know that that has been very successful for that company as
Yep,
well. So
yep.
that's great. That's great. Um, well, I think we could talk about the future of AI a little bit. I know we've touched on different things of AI, but what do you think about where do you see it going, say, like in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you have an idea of what that'll be, or do you think that we're just going to get better at how it is and how
It
it's
will
utilized?
it will definitely get better, and how we use it. I think it will continue, like I mentioned, to be part of companies, right? Specifically, bigger companies. And I think the quicker companies can adapt to it and figure out how they can use AI in their portfolio, right?
Sure.
It's going to be advantageous for them, right? It's kind of like the assembly line did the Ford, right? Those
Mhm.
types of things,
Oh, yeah.
if you can take advantage of it early on and understand it, that gives you an ultimately great edge in
Competitive
the
advantage for
marketplace.
sure. Yes.
I mean, like, just like anything else, your marketplace could be flooded, right?
Mhm.
With business, or there's not a lot of growth there, and so these little things like this can really help move the needle for a company in those types of areas. So
Yeah.
it's I consider it just growing in that respect, and then, like I mentioned before, I think it will continue to grow in robotics. Like, I think within 5 years, 6 years, you're
Mhm.
probably going to see some offerings in the home related to robotics and AI. Like, Roomba is going to be an antique at that point, I
I
think.
want you to know though, people love I have women that'll say to me, I love my Roomba. I love it. It's awesome. And it and what else? What's next? What's next? What are they gonna be able to
Well,
do? Jet
Roomba can only dust the floor, right, or clean the
right,
floor.
right.
But if you had a robot that could dust your house,
Yeah.
that would be pretty awesome. Or my favorite thing, having kids and family, pick up after your kids. Like, I
Oh
would
yeah.
love to have somebody
Please.
go around.
Do my wash for me. Drive fold my clothes.
Yep.
That's what I need.
But I think those mundane tasks, I think, like I said, 5, it might be a little bit longer than that out there, but you can see people really doing that. There's some cool videos out on the internet where a robot has learned how to put something together. I think it was like make a cup of coffee or something like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that to me is it's the way it's going to continue to go. It's still quite out of the price range, but
Sure.
Roomba is pre-programming, right? And it will run over a brand new rug that you put down, and it might get stuck because it doesn't know.
Right.
But if you
Right.
can feed it information and use a little bit more data learning, like I said, or even a
Wow.
little bit of intelligence in that realm, it will know that you put a nice fluffy rug down and I shouldn't go over it. I'm going to avoid it.
Right.
Or
Go
the
around
nice,
it. Go around
nice
it.
new piece of furniture, I'm going to
Right.
go
Don't
around
hit
that.
it. Now, my son was telling me actually yesterday that there is a restaurant here in Louisville that has a robot that brings out your food, like, hands you your food.
Yep. Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, I've got to go check that out. I mean, that's amazing. I see the dogs that they have that, that are robotic dogs. And it just, you just stop and look at it and be like, oh my gosh, that's just amazing, what it
Yep.
can do. So
Yeah.
pretty cool stuff, that's for sure. Well, Kevin, I think we're going to stop here, and I would like to have you back because I know there's other things that we would like to discuss. I know we've hit on a lot of different things, but there's a, there's more things that we need to talk about, and probably in the next couple of weeks or so, I'm going to have you back on, and we'll touch on those and touch about our products that we have at Focused Apps that can utilize AI. And I'm real excited to do that.
Thank you.
This has been incredible. Once again, I always learn something from you, and I appreciate it. So, viewers out there, please, if you have any questions and you want to, ask more questions based on watching this podcast, you can reach out to me or Kevin, and you can go out on our website and put in the contact form at www.focustapps.com. And we appreciate you taking your time to listen about AI today. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. Bye
See
bye.
you.